make it a little bit more comfortable for us in general use. Something I hit on earlier was the display icons, and you can see they're down here. Now, by default, you can actually pan around the viewport by holding down the middle mouse button, and if I hold down the middle mouse button and move around, you can see I can pan around the viewport. And while I'm doing that, you can see my cursor's changed into a hand shape, which indicates that I'm in pan mode. And if I leave go, it changes back to selection mode. Now, selection mode is the default mode. So in selection mode, I can select objects, I can select events, I can even select wires, and I can select individual elements inside events. I can select the operators. So selection mode is the standard mode, but without using the middle mouse button, I can actually put the event view into pan mode by clicking on the pan button, and you can see the mouse buttons. The cursor has changed to a hand, and that indicates that I can now pan. And rather than doing it with the middle mouse button, I can now use the left mouse button, and I can pan around the viewport. But one of the drawbacks with this is now I can't actually select anything. I'm trying to select these events, but I can't actually do it. So generally, if you have a 3-button mouse, it's better to just use the middle mouse button to pan. It's much more interactive, and you don't get stuck in a pan mode like this. It's not really needed, really. Now, I can actually get out of any of the other display modes just by right-clicking anywhere in the viewport. So if I right-click here, you can see I've gone back to selection mode. So you can very quickly get back to selection mode. It's not really that much of a problem. One of the things which you may be used to in Macs is using a middle mouse button's wheel feature to zoom in and out, and unfortunately that doesn't actually work in the event view. So if I try and do that now, I'm moving my mouse up and down. You can see it's actually scrolling the window. But it's not zooming in and out, so that doesn't actually work. Whereas I said the middle mouse button does actually work for pan, so at least we still have that. So if you want to zoom in and out, you can actually go down to the view tools and click on zoom, and now you've got a magnifying glass, and that works in the standard way you would expect in Windows. If you click and hold down the left mouse button and push up, you can zoom in, pull down, and you can zoom out. So there you go, you can zoom in and out to your heart's content. And you can see particle flow and actually zoom to allow you to see exactly what it is that you want to do. Now, generally zooming in isn't that useful unless you've got bad eyesight, maybe. Whereas obviously zooming out is useful when you've got a very complex flow and you want to have an overview of it. So I'll just click off, and now we're back to selection mode, and I can pan around the viewport. But there's nothing really else to see. I haven't got a large complex flow chart, type particle flow going on here. So for now, it's not really that much of an issue. You can see the third option is region zoom, and that works again like you would expect in most Windows applications. You can draw a little marquee around where you want to zoom into, and particle flow will zoom to that level. And by using this, you can get quite a large zoom going on. So there we go. We've zoomed right in there. Now, the next two items, they're pretty useful when you've zoomed in and you don't really want to have, as you can see, a particularly ridiculously bad huge zoom on the viewport at the moment. So rather than actually fiddling around and trying to get it back down to a reasonable size, you can zoom to extents, and that will actually fit the particle flow within the view that you've got currently. But you can see that the icons aren't drawn properly, and that's because it's actually zoomed in a little bit, maybe, compared to the 100% zoom that you would normally have in the viewport in the event view. So to get that, we can use the final option, which is to cancel all zoom. You can see you've got the no zoom option. If we click on that, we go back to 100% zoom, which is the standard zoom. So there you go. You've got your options to pan, to zoom, to do a region zoom, to zoom extents the particle flow so it fills the viewport, and then you can actually cancel the zoom. So you've got enough options there really to be able to navigate around the viewport. It's quite flexible in that respect. Okay, so what about actually moving events around? How do you do that? Well, you can just select events with the left mouse button, and then you can just click on the title bar of the event and then just drag around. And you can see that as I do so, the wires update. They're fully dynamic, and I can just drop it wherever I want to. You can also select multiple events at the same time. You just draw a marquee around all the events. You can see they become selected with white, and that means that they're all active for a selection, and you can just move them around the viewport now. There we go. Also, you know, if I've selected them like that, I could press delete and that would delete all the events, or I could just select a particular event and that would delete it. And I can also select the wire, as you see, and if I press delete, there we go, it's unwired the two events together. So let's just put that back there. Okay, so there you go, you can see you got pretty powerful ways of moving multiple objects around in the viewport. There's quite a bit of flexibility there in that respect. What about resizing events? Can you do that? Well, you can in one dimension, but not in another. Vertically, the event is actually stuck at the size of the amount of operators that you have within it. In other words, you can't have any sort of blank space at the bottom of the event. But horizontally, you can actually resize the event by going to the right border, and you can see when I've gone over the right border, it's produced a left-right arrow. That indicates I can actually press left mouse button to select it, and now I can actually drag the event out so it's actually wider. And I'll do the same thing for this event as well, and for the source event. Now, you may think that's not really that useful, but it can actually be useful, because a lot of the operators will have an operator name. All operators have an operator name, and then next to that in brackets will be some of the more salient parameters of that particular operator. So you can see with the position icon, it's telling you that it's using volume for the location, and you can see with the speed operator, it's telling you that it's using a long icon arrow. And you can see with the age test, the same thing. It's saying the age test is any particle which is over greater than 20 frames of age. So with some operators, this information can actually be quite voluminous, so it can be useful to actually resize the event so you can actually see what this information says, and you can get a better idea than what the operator is actually what it does. Something else that you can do is we'll just resize these down for a second. There we go, and I'll minimize it again a little bit. Something else that you can do is you can actually turn off the elements that you're using, and you can do that on an operator by operator basis, or you can do it for entire events. So if I click on this event, and you can see it's got this little light bulb, that means that the event is active. And if I click on that, the event isn't active anymore. That means that, you know, particles will fly down and they'll get past the event, but when they get past the event, nothing within it is active anymore. So basically the particles don't appear. So you can see that as they pass into the second event, they become inactive. Now that's quite useful. You know, sometimes you may want to just disable an event, and you can do that, as I said, just by using the little light bulb feature. So we'll do that for the first event as well, and we'll scrub the timeline, and you can see you get nothing now because the first event isn't active, so you know the particles aren't birthed. Now it's interesting that when you did so, the test icon changed color. So let me just reactivate the event again. You can see that at the moment it's a completely interactive test, but when I turn off the event, it becomes a green light bulb. Now what that actually means is that this test is always valid from now on, and that basically means that if we did have any particles being flowed into the event, they would flow out again. Basically, you know, this test is true, so the particles would flow out again. Now, as it turns out in this case, we're actually using an event with no particles flowing into it, because the operator within the event was actually providing the particles, it was birthing them, so we don't see anything. If we scrub the timeline, we don't actually see anything. There's nothing going on. So we'll turn the event back on. And something you can also do is, as I said, you can turn off individual operators. So if I scrub the timeline down, you can see that there we go, we've got our particles in our first event, we've got our particles in our second event, and they're all moving. But let's see what happens if we just click on this icon here, and see it's become grayed out, and you can see now that there's no speed assigned. So the particles get birthed and they don't go anywhere, they just sit on the icon, and then when they get to event 2, because they reach age 20, then they get some speed. So there we go, they build up and then they start moving. So we can turn that back on again. Sorry, wrong event. Sorry, wrong operator. And as you just saw, you can also do the same thing for tests. You can actually tell a test to be constantly off if you want to. So there we go, you can see all our particles are being emitted, and there they are, they go into the second event, and we can say, you know, no you don't go into the second event. We've made the test permanently off.